Do you want to know how to connect effectively after broken trust? We'll discuss that today.
Now, the last episode covered how Jay replaced his addiction with a bigger life. Things anywhere from sitting by the beehives all the way up to like seeing orca whales and sitting in the redwood forest. This conversation picks up from there.
I'm interested when you talk about these two scenarios, the part of it that stands out to me between the whale story and the redwood story and the being still together outside story versus all the escapist fare of television and video games and fantasy novels. I acknowledge the sort of majesty of the redwoods, or which I've never been there, nor have I had whales 30 feet from, this like small watercraft that I was in before. But I imagine both are exceedingly awe-inspiring because I have a sense of scale for both of them. But I'm curious what percentage of it is the bond part of it, because some of my most important and finest memories from my life, for example, like I've been to like a location that I think is really amazing. And maybe I've been there alone on a business trip, and maybe I've been there with my spouse or a best friend or a group of classmates or whatever, growing up. And I always liked the shared experience version of that. And I'm interested in your take on that part of it.
What we talk about is relationships need face-to-face time, and it needs shoulder-to-shoulder time. And you think about how guys typically interact. They watch the game together. They fish shoulder to shoulder mostly. They do something where it's not a lot of intense talking or interacting. It's, we're both kind of facing this way and we're doing a thing.
That's interesting.
And so, yeah, it's a huge shared experience. Then for the other half of the relationship, women typically are more wired to the face-to-face, the communication, the interaction piece. And so it can be a little bit of both. Even riding in our canoe, it's shoulder to shoulder when we're kind of paddling and, we're sharing, even though we sit front to back, we're sharing an experience. But then we'll take time and we'll just sit and we'll talk and we'll interact. And now we can talk about our shared experience. Wasn't it cool when we saw the eagle take off? That now, instead of it being kind of my own exclusive, either on the game or in the book, and it's something that, she doesn't read the same way I do. And so we don't just have book experiences to share and that kind of thing. But now we have a shared experience that serves as a basis of communication for me. Because, how many guys have you had or heard say, I don't know what to talk about? So begin with the shared experience that the two of you have had. What was your favorite part of the day? Or let's look for another place where we can see, get on a kind of a river or whatever. So I think it helps me stay engaged, to have those shared experiences versus just constant communication. I think guys most of the time get overwhelmed in that pretty quickly. So the shared experience allows me to say, oh, okay, we can talk from this place together.
And I had to learn to do the shoulder to shoulder type interactions. I had to learn to do the recreational companionship part with Jay, because especially after D-Day, before D-Day for 15 years, we were kind of somewhat living our own lives, not that disconnected. We would go to restaurants together, but we just weren't very connected. Like I said, Jay would come home and either watch TV or play a video game, and I was off doing something. For the first year and a half, we were doing a lot of talking. Hours every night. He would come home like, no TV, let's talk, because it took us that long to start getting traction. it took us that long for me to feel like Jay was actually hearing me and our talks were getting somewhere. But after that, I was like, okay, I have to back off. I need a break from all the talking. I feel like they're starting to work. So we went from talking every night to talking on relational stuff a couple nights a week. And then like Saturday was our date day. So no heavy talking. And then I moved, maybe Mondays and Wednesdays, we wouldn't do any heavy talking either. So that helped me take it from the intense healing the relationship talks to, okay, I can wait. I can sit in the discomfort. We will get to it later. I'll jot a note, stick it in the file, and then have my pick of what I want to talk about next time. But it also gave me time to think and plan out a different way of saying things. And, but on the off days, I mean, we had a list of things to do. Do you want to sit by the fire pit? Do you want to sit and watch the bees? Do you want to sit and watch birds on the back deck? Those kind of things, they became the rest parts where we did have good shared experiences versus nothing but bad conversations, but as far as your question, the shared versus individual experiences, what I've seen with healed relationships, what I've seen with our own is typically, especially with the clients we see or the clients that come to us, the woman has gotten used to doing things on her own. The woman she might have a very rich spiritual life. So she's used to, and she's getting kind of filled that way. She longs for this, but he's not necessarily at that place yet, or, would rather do video games or whatever. So I think for the guy, it's almost like it needs to be spoken to him. Like, doesn't this feel better? Doesn't connecting like this, or at least feel just as good as, reading a fantasy book or checking out in front of the TV? It may not. And at that point they get a professional involved. But as far as what percentage of it was the tall trees, the awesomeness of the tall trees versus what percentage of it was the bonding, I think at first a lot of it was the bonding for Jay, because he wasn't involved in drugs. He was involved in pornography, meaning he wanted some type of human interaction. So to realize we could create something that felt as good or better than porn, I think was a healthy thing for him to learn.
Yeah.
I think the parallels to me are extraordinary. And it was really, they just jumped out at me as you guys were talking earlier. The parallels between like heavy pornography use versus like the human connection component of it, and just what I've read about those two things and the healthy version of connecting in like a physically intimate way. It espouses like all the themes that you were talking about with putting down the video game controller and turning off the television and disconnecting from electronics, period. I just found that really interesting thematically.
So by now we brought up some vacations that really helped us heal, but in 2 episodes, we will cover some of the things we did while on a budget in order to rebuild trust. So be looking for that in episode 4.24.
The next time we'll be talking about how hiddenness and blind spots are harming your relationship.
See you then.